Chapter 2 Being Flat. When Stanley got used to being flat, he enjoyed it. He could go in and out of rooms, even when the door was closed, just by lying down and sliding through the crack at the bottom. Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop said it was silly. They were quite proud of him. Arthur got jealous and tried to slide under a door, but he just banged his head. Being flat could also be helpful, Stanley found. He was taking a walk with Mrs. Lambchop one afternoon when her favorite ring fell from her finger. The ring rolled across the sidewalk and down between the bars of a grating that covered a deep, dark shaft. Mrs. Lambchop began to cry. "I have an idea," Stanley said. He took the laces out of his shoes and an extra pair out of his pocket and tied them all together to make one long lace. Then he tied one end of that to the back of his belt and gave the other end to his mother. "Lower me," he said, "and I will look for the ring." Ahora, este capítulo se llama Siendo Plano o Siendo Llano. Stanley se está acostumbrando a de ser plano o lleno. Dice que hay bastantes ventajas de ser plano. Por ejemplo, él puede entrar un cuarto simplemente por yendo debajo de la puerta en vez de abrirlo. También pasó una cosa cuando su mamá se le cayó su anillo y Stanley tenía la idea de ir por su anillo. "Thank you, Stanley," Mrs. Lambchop said. She lowered him between the bars and moved him carefully up and down and side to side so that he could search the whole floor of the shaft. Two policemen came by and stared at Mrs. Lambchop as she stood holding the long lace that ran down through the grating. She pretended not to notice them. "What's the matter, lady?" the first policeman asked. "Is your yo-yo stuck?" I'm not playing with the yo-yo," Mrs. Lambchop said sharply. "My son is at the other end of this lace, if you must know." "Get the net, Harry," said the second policeman. "We have caught a cuckoo." Just then, down in the shaft, Stanley cried, "Hooray!" Mrs. Lambchop pulled him up and saw that he had the ring. "Good for you, Stanley," she said. Then she turned angrily to the policeman. "A cuckoo indeed," she said. "Shame." The policeman apologized. "We didn't get it, lady," they said. "We have been hasty. We see that now." "People should think twice before making rude remarks," said Mrs. Lambchop, "and then not make them at all." Bueno, mientras Stanley está bajado de la calle intentando acoger el anillo de su mamá, llegaron dos policías. Ellos le preguntaron a la mamá de Stanley qué está haciendo. ¿Está su yo-yo entrapado? Y dijo la señora Miss Lambchop, "No, mi hijo está debajo." Y la policía pensaba que ella estaba loco. Entonces, al, al, al decir eso, escuchar a Stanley dijo, "Ya lo tenía." Entonces, cuando la policía le dieron cuenta de que era un niño verdaderamente debajo, Ellos se pidió disculpa y se fue. The policeman realized that that was a good rule and said they would try to remember it. One day, Stanley got a letter from his friend Thomas Anthony Jeffrey, whose family had moved recently to California. A school vacation was about to begin, and Stanley was invited to spend it with the Jeffreys. "Oh boy," Stanley said, "I would love to go." Mr. Lambchop sighed. "A round trip train or airplane ticket to California is very expensive," he said. "I'll have to think of a cheaper way." Mr. Lambchop came home from the office that evening. He brought with him an enormous brown paper envelope. Bueno, la policía se dieron cuenta de que la señora decía la verdad y ellos dijeron, bueno, es una regla muy buena de seguir. No debe decir algo al menos que no lo sabe. Bueno, más tarde, durante el día, Stanley recibió una carta de su amigo, Thomas Anthony Jeffrey. Él y su familia vive en California y le invitó a Stanley a pasar las vacaciones con él. Su papá pensó, bueno, un viaje, un boleto por avión o por un tren puede ser muy caro hasta California. Y él iba a pensar en una forma más barata de mandar a Stanley. Entonces llegó a casa con un sobre gigante y marrón. "Now, then, Stanley," he said, "try this for size." The envelope fit Stanley very well. There was even room left over. Mrs. Lambchop discovered for an egg salad sandwich, which made with thin bread and a toothbrush case filled with milk. They had to put a great many stamps on the envelope to pay for both airmail and insurance, but it was still much less expensive than a train or airplane ticket to California. The next day, Mr. and Mrs. Lambchop slid Stanley into his envelope along with the egg salad sandwich and the toothbrush case full of milk and mailed him to the box on the counter. The envelope had to be folded to fit through the slot, but Stanley was a limber boy, and inside the box he straightened up again. Mrs. Lambchop was nervous because Stanley had never been away from home before. She rapped on the box. "Can you hear me, dear?" she called. "Are you all right?" Stanley's voice came quite clearly. "I'm fine. Can I eat my sandwich now?" "Wait an hour, and try not to get overheated, dear," Mrs. Lambchop said. Then she and Mr. Lambchop cried. Ahora, entonces, sus padres de Stanley le metieron a Stanley en el sobre muy grande. También le dio un sándwich de ensalada de huevos y, y un trocito de lleno de leche. Ellos lo pusieron muchos sellos en el sobre y eso, según el papá, Mr. Lanchop, era mucho más barato que un boleto en avión o un tren. Entonces le llevaron al buzón, se lo metió en el buzón y Stanley tenía que doblar un poquito, pero no pasaba nada. Entonces, cuando estaba en el buzón, le pidieron sus padres ¿Estará bien? Dijo Stanley que sí, y quería saber si podía comer su sándwich. Su mamá dijo, no, no, espera una hora. Y luego estaba ellos muy tristes porque él nunca había estado fuera de la casa. Goodbye, Stanley, goodbye. And they went home. Stanley had a fine time in California. When the visit was over, the Jeffreys returned him in a beautiful white envelope they made themselves. It had a red it had red and blue markings to show that it was airmail, and Thomas Jeffrey had lettered it valuable and fragile, and this end up on both sides. Back home, Stanley told his family that he had been handled so carefully he never felt a single bump. Mr. Lambchop said it proved that jet planes were wonderful, and so was the Postal Service. And this was a great age to live in. Stanley thought so too. Stanley tenía un buen tiempo en California. Cuando se acabó la visita, la familia Jeffrey le mandó a su casa en un sobre muy bonito y blanco, que ellos lo hicieron a sí mismo. Lo puso las cartas, puso las letras frágil y uh, muy delicado en las dos líneas, en los dos lados. Cuando llegó a la familia, cuando Stanley llegó a su familia en casa, le dijo que tuvo un buen viaje, que no se sentía nada. Y su padre, Mr. Lambchop, le dijo que sí, los aviones son cosas buenas y también el servicio postal también es maravilloso. Es un tiempo muy, muy grande en que vivimos.